Last year, I made a video discussing what I consider to be the worst routes in Train Sim World 5, with LGV Niddertalbahn taking the top, or rather bottom, spot. That video did much better than I was expecting, to the point where it now has over 31,000 views, and I still stand by my choices for what went on the worst list. While Train Sim World is, unfortunately, still held back by a lot of factors, not just the abundance of really short routes with questionable start and end points, there are still some diamonds in the rough if you know where to look. And despite what some people may think, I do not hate every single thing about TSW. One example of a diamond, as it were, is the Cathcart Circle, a non-linear route focused on suburban services out of Glasgow Central. While the route is still quite small, there is enough variety here to keep it from getting boring, especially since you're able to run 3 full services on this route. The addition of the Class 380 Desiro, or as I call her, the German Haggis, significantly improves the experience. Since last October, I've wanted to make a video that's essentially the polar opposite of the worst list, but not all of the routes in this best list are here because they're my favourites. Seeing as I've already gone over them in their own dedicated video, and to try and avoid repeating myself, I left all but one of my 4 favourite routes off the main list, and instead tried to focus on other routes that are either high quality, fun to drive on, or complete with lots of replay value, or all 3, of course. The following list is in no particular order, and I'll try to keep the route's respective segments as brief as possible. First one on the list is the London Overground Goblin Line. I'm still calling it the Goblin Line because I refuse to use the route's official name, in the same way that I refuse to address Auckland's Britomart station by its new name. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Anyway, the Goblin add-on was made by Dovetail themselves and released in March 2024. It focuses on a short, but high-density, commuter service in northeast London, running for 13 miles, or around 22 kilometres, from Gospel Oak to Barking Riverside. The latter is a new station opened in July 2022, prior to which, the overground trains would terminate at Barking, where they meet C2C and London Underground services. The main reasons I'm putting this route on the list are A. its status as a complete end-to-end route, which we don't have too many of in TSW, and B. the presence of 13 highly detailed stations, which feature lots of custom signage and, in a few cases, working lifts as well. Here's a demonstration of a lift at Gospel Oak, the western terminus for the Goblin.
Doors opening, lift going down. Doors closing. Concourse. Doors opening, lift going up.
I also like the Class 710 Aventra electric multiple units that comes with this route, although I couldn't really decide what it is that I like about this unit. In any case, I'll be honest and say that I'm a fan of the Aventra trains, with the exception of the Crossrail Class 345. The 710's default sounds were okay, but there is a sound mod available to download from the TrainSim community website. Of course, mods are only compatible with the PC version of TSW. As much as I like the Gospel Oak to Barking Riverside line, I don't drive on it too often because, like all short and linear routes, this one can get boring fairly quickly. In the time since the Goblin's release, we have got a second London Overground route for TSW in the form of the Watford DC line, which is included in the West Coast Main Line London to Milton Keynes route, and a third London Overground route is on the way too. Thinking back to the Goblin, I can easily recommend this route to people who like high-density stopping passenger services, highly detailed stations, and reasonably modern electric multiple units. Now if only we could get the Lee Valley lines in TSW as well, complete with the AC-only 710/1 variant and all. Or better yet, the East London line from Highbury and Islington to New Cross and Crystal Palace. We're going over to the continent for the next route on this list. Nachfolger Dresden was developed by Dovetail and released in September 2021, and has since earned a good reputation in the community. I dare say that's because of the wide variety of services you can operate, not to mention the non-linear layout of course. Although you get a decent selection of locomotives, plus one multiple unit, with the route as standard, extra timetable mode layers from other German add-ons will make the rail scene considerably more varied. I still haven't got to the expert BR101, so for all I know, that one may also layer onto this route just like the original BR101. The main section of this route is the main line from Dresden Hauptbahnhof to Riesa, via Radebeul Ost and Koswig, but you also get the fast line that branches off just before Koswig, and rejoins the main line south of Neuenkreuz. Two additional branches, one going to Meissen-Triebischtal and the other to Grossenhain, are also included. My favourite motive power to drive on this route is easily the BR442 Talent 2 electric multiple unit, although the inclusion of only the 3-car variant is disappointing. There should be a 5-car variant as well. As much as I like this route, I'm well aware of the fact that it isn't perfect. In my opinion, it's let down by A. the lack of any motive power that was new to TSW, B. the scenery being subpar in a few places, and C. the main route coverage ending at Riesa instead of going all the way to Leipzig. Feel free to watch my in-depth review of this route if you would like to learn more about it. We're going back to England for my next choice. This is the East Coastway route, developed by Dovetail and released in December 2019. Some of you may disagree with this route's inclusion on my list, and I can understand why. But I have my reasons for why I think this is one of TSW's better UK routes. In addition to the Class 377/4 Electrostar, the base route also includes the Class 66 diesel locomotive in EWS colours, plus the JNA freight wagons of course, and you can also get the Class 313 EMU as a separately sold add-on. The 313 was released for TSW in October 2021, and helped to make East Coastway's rail scene more realistic at the time. I didn't like how the route looked when you only saw 377s on every single passenger service, although that's actually realistic now following 2023. It's a shame that DTG only bothered to include one variant of the 377. Thinking back to the Class 313, the only variant of this unit you get in TSW is the refurbished Southern condition, which has notable differences from the original 1976 condition. East Coastway is now a time capsule, in a sense, following the retirement of Southern's 313s in May 2023. Fortunately, out of the 64 Class 313s that were built, 2 examples have been preserved, including 313-201, which famously received a Heritage British Rail livery in 2017. Annoyingly, the base 313 pack doesn't include 313-201 in a Heritage livery as standard. You'll have to download it from the Creators Club. Incidentally, I'm surprised Dovetail haven't officially released this livery as a gameplay pack. As for East Coastway's route coverage, it only goes from Brighton to Eastbourne, plus the branch line to Seaford, so the total route length is only around 30 miles. Incidentally, one of my favourite services to run in the entire game is Brighton to Seaford and back with the Class 313. It's a shame that ECW doesn't include the Class 171 Turbostar and the line over to Hastings and Ashford as well, but what we did get is still fine in my book. As for why I think ECW is one of the better UK routes, it's mainly because of the experience of driving third-rail EMUs in the countryside. The route generally feels fairly quiet and peaceful, which offers a nice change from the busier routes in London. Now we go to the north of England for what I imagine many people would consider to be one of TSW's best UK routes, namely Blackpool branches by Just Trains. I wanted to put West Coast Main Line Preston to Carlisle on the list too, but I haven't been on that route enough times to get a solid opinion, so we're sticking with Blackpool branches for now. The Blackpool route was released in November 2023, and from what I've seen, it's earned a pretty good reputation in the community. It's notable for its non-linear nature, being set in 1986, its inclusion of a good rendition of the Class 142 Pacer, and having numerous buildings with fully detailed accessible interiors, amongst many other things. As for route coverage, you get Preston to Blackpool South, Blackpool North, Burn Naze, and Ormskirk, so the total length is around 48 miles. One of my favourite services to run on this route is the passenger service from Ormskirk to Preston and Blackpool South with the Class 142, although you can also use the Class 101 on here if you've got Northern Transpennine, Tees Valley, or Preston to Carlisle. Although I'm happy to just do the local services with the Class 142, it's good to see that you can also do some shunting at Preston or Blackpool North with the Class 08, or use the Class 47 to haul freight or express passenger services. I went into more detail on Blackpool branches in my review, which was published not long after the add-on's initial release. Suffice to say, this is a highly detailed route set in an interesting time period, thus making it another time capsule, like East Coastway, complete with plenty of interesting services to run. I wouldn't consider Boston Sprinter to be one of the absolute highest quality routes, certainly not as much as Blackpool branches or the Niddertalbahn, but I'm including it on this list because I wanted to put at least one American route on here in the interest of fairness. I've got an updated review of this route in the works, but I don't know when it'll be published. The main reason why I like this route is because of the included rolling stock, especially the MPI F40PH-3C diesel locomotive, although the mediocre sounds on the F40 and lack of double-decker MBTA coaches have always bugged me. In any case, I like doing the Boston South to Stoughton run for reasons that I'll explain in the eventual review. As for the ACS-64 electric locomotive, while I think this thing has pretty good sounds, and I enjoy the driving experience, it sucks that Boston Sprinter's route coverage is so short, and that it only takes around 40 minutes to go from Boston to Providence with an Amtrak service. I know I could also run the ACS-64 on the New York to Trenton route, since that is at least 15 miles longer than Boston to Providence, But I've had so many issues with New York to Trenton to the point where it puts me off from having any interest in driving on it. And to put it mildly, I certainly wouldn't recommend it to other TSW players. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Amtrak Acela as well, although this thing is sold separately from the base route. I haven't much of an opinion on the Acela, since I haven't driven her too often, but I still like seeing this, for want of a better word, unit in TSW, because she makes the Boston Sprinter rail scene look that little bit more realistic. It's a pity the double-decker MBTA coaches from the Worcester route still don't layer onto Boston Sprinter. To be honest, when I was deciding what US route to feature on this list, I struggled to think of one that, in my opinion, is anywhere near as good as the likes of the Niddertalbahn, Blackpool branches, or even the London Overground Goblin line. For instance, while I like the often busy rail scene on the Harlem line and extended Long Island Railroad routes, there are still a lot of issues that let both routes down. I'm probably not the only one who has noticed a stark contrast between the US and European routes where quality is concerned, and I really wish that wasn't the case. Because of its impressive scenery, especially in winter, and the challenging driving experience that it offers, I wanted to put the Semmeringbahn route on the list as well. But I had to leave it off due to the poor rolling stock offering and other issues besides. See my full review of this route for more information on why I wouldn't recommend it. To summarise the rolling stock situation, DTG didn't bother adding the first-class Eurofema coaches, only the second-class variant. The included Österreichische Bundesbahnen Class 1116 Taurus is so similar to the BR182 that she's barely a new addition, and you get a recycled Class 4024 Talent 1 from S-Bahn Vorarlberg. Make of that what you will. And there you have it, a selection of 5 routes that I consider to be some of the best that Train Sim World has to offer. Although I don't think TSW could ever fully replace TS Classic, especially when there are still a lot of things about this game, and Dovetail's business practices, that get on my nerves, to put it mildly, there are still enough things I like about TSW for me to keep playing. Now if only we could get some New Zealand or Australian routes in the game as well.